While there is some doubt that women actually engaged in frontline battle during the American Revolution, what we do know for a fact is that women did make an impact in the fight for Americans' freedom during that time. Because women disguised themselves as men, they fought in various battles. They disguised themselves. They were couriers, spies, medics. Some served as maids as well as cooks. And for those women who chose not to fight on the front line, they did not leave their voice muted. They were fighting in the background for what would be America's first government. You have women such as Lucy Knox, Martha Washington, Sybil Ludington, Phyllis Wheatley, Abigail Adams, Margaret Corbin, Deborah Franklin, Mamie Kate, and Betsy Ross. These women who fought and stood up for the rights of women, these women who fought for the rights of men, women, children, they risked not only their lives, but if the revolution did not, if the men were not successful in the revolution, those men, they would lose their husbands. They would be killed for treason if the revolution failed. So there was a lot at stake, and a lot of the women risked in order to bring America its freedom. One such person was a young girl. Today she would be described as an army brat. Her name is Sybil Ludington. Sybil Ludington's father was Colonel Henry Ludington. He fought in the French and Indian War. His position in the army made it such that his family had to move around from location to location, gathering up the militia, gathering up the men. On the particular night of April 26, 1777, Colonel Ludington received some news that the British forces, which were led by Major General Tyrone, had made their way to Danbury, Connecticut, and they were destroying ammunition. They were destroying army supplies of the Continental Army. Colonel Ludington could not leave his home because he was waiting for more men to come so that he could tell them what to do in order to ward off the British from coming in. Well, his 16-year-old daughter, who happened to be his oldest child, she stepped up, volunteered, and she volunteered to ride the 40 miles on horseback at night by herself, knocking on the doors, yelling to the militia that they needed to get to to her home, to her father, to get news on how to beat off, to defend themselves from the British. Read more about her. It's a very interesting story. Then we have Betsy Ross. Betsy Ross, we know, or we may not know, is the woman that's given credit with making America's first flag. Now, the story of Betsy Ross is given through oral family history because there's very few documentation that actually shows that Betsy Ross had this conversation with George Washington, that she that she was the only one to make the American flag. But what we know from oral history and from some documents is that she was met by George Washington and given specific instructions on a flag to commemorate the independence from Britain by George Washington. And he told her, we know a story that says that she suggested to him, instead of using an 8 or 6-point star, to use a 5-point star. And as colonies come into the Union, don't add stripes to the flag, add stars to the flag, because adding stripes would change the structure of the flag, but adding stripes would change the structure of the flag, but adding stars would not. She too has a very interesting story, and I think it would be advantageous of you to find out more about both Betsy Ross and Sybil Ludington, as well as other women of the American Revolution.